Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Internet Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Very good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 5th of May 2013. Good evening. And the weather's been okay, a bit overcast, but not too bad, Steve.
No, the weather outside, that sounds like a song. Oh, the weather outside. Yeah. No, the weather outside has been nice the past 24, 48 hours. A little bit overcast, but we have had a fair bit of sunshine. And as it's officially summertime, it's about bloody time, because we've had a lot of bad weather in recent times, and it's nice to see a little bit of sunshine. It is actually nice to see people out cutting their grass, you know, and neighbours out in the short sleeves and the t-shirts, and you know, just there's kind of a buzz around. You know, the flowers are blooming, the trees are treeing. No, yeah, it's nice. Yeah.
And it's a bank holiday weekend over here in Ireland at the moment.
So no work tomorrow.
Excellent stuff. So we have a lie on in the morning. Okay, a guest on who's going to be on in a few minutes is a chap called Jerry Flynn. Jerry's background is he's against smart meters, and his background in the military has got to do with microwave technology, but in a different branch than Barry Trower. So what we'll do is when we get Jerry on, we're going to be talking about all that technology and the dangers of wireless technology. But until Jerry comes in, we just have a few things to go through. Steve, over to you.
Yeah. The first thing I want to say is a big shout out to my father if he's listening, and I hope he is, because I told him that we were going to be discussing microwave and Wi-Fi technology on the show this evening, because he's very interested in that, and we've had many conversations about it and swapped information, so I do hope he's tuned in this fine evening.
Well, before we do that, let's just go through the communication channels and let people know how they can contact us.
As I always do.
Sorry, go ahead.
That was next.
Oh, was it? Okay.
No, I finished. I finished what I was saying.
Okay.
Info at OYMIreland.com for your emails during the show and during the week as well. If you want to share some information with us, you can also, depending on what stream you're listening on, if you want to join the chat and chat to our chatters, or pose questions for our guest this evening, you can log on to OYMradio.com. On the left-hand side, you'll see the click here for a live chat button. Just press on that, and then you can log in with your real name or a pseudonym of your choice. You'll then be able to pose questions to our guests and also for ourselves this evening. And lastly, if you want to contact us during the show or during the week on the phone line, you can
give us a call on 046 927 1212.
046 927 1212. If you're ringing in from outside the Republic of Ireland, it's 00353 in front of that. Alan.
Steve, back to you.
Back to me. Back to you. Back to you. We're playing tennis here. First thing on the agenda for this evening is we've said it over the past couple of weeks, and we still have a few bumper stickers available. When I say a few, there's a good few, so you know there's plenty for everyone. But they are still available. That's €5 for €5, and you know if you get them, if you want to order them, we do have a little gallery set up on the website, a kind of a bumper stickers on tour, if you like. So if you order 5 stickers, you can get them. You can stick them in various places and take. Well, obviously, that could be misconstrued, so we may have to put a disclaimer on that. But you can stick them in different places and take pictures of them and send them in to us, and we'll put them up in the gallery.
Excellent. Now, if anybody's connected to our stream on the actual website, can you just, if you're on the chat box as well, can you just let us know that you're hearing the actual OYM stream okay? Because we had a problem there last week with it. We just want to make sure that it's working this week as well. If you can do that, that would be fantastic. Right, okay, just before the news, we went on, we came across a website, a link actually to a website that was sent over, during the week. And the website is called beforethenews.com. And apparently there's an article on there saying that a Navy SEAL admits nukes to be detonated nationwide for martial law agenda in America. And it's supposed to be today in America. So I know we're about 8 hours behind, give or take, depending on the time zone. So this is what this Navy SEAL said. He also said that they did actually disarm a few of the actual nukes, but some of them still got through. Now, we'll just see what happens. The Crown Copyright there just says that the OEM stream doesn't work. Yeah, it's really weird because it's saying to us that it is working, but for some reason, people aren't getting on there. But well, again, if you can't hear us on the OYM stream, please go over to the UWS stream or the TNS stream, and you'll be able to hear us there.
Then again, if people are listening on the OYM stream, they're sitting there wondering why the show hasn't started.
Yeah, exactly, because they won't hear anything. But so there you go. So lucky enough, we have three streams to choose from. But yeah, so if you hear anything about, if anything happens in the States, by all means, for any listeners that's in the States, if you hear anything, please send us an email and let us know, because we'd be interested to find out if that was true or it's just, again, kind of false flag type of thing.
It's about 11 a.m. over there now, isn't it? Depending on
give
where
or take the time zone, yeah.
Yeah, so
yeah,
I don't know. So it's going to be Sunday morning. If they're going to do anything, what time do you reckon they do it, before or after lunch?
Don't know. They might have to lunch first and then do it after.
I'd say after lunch, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So we'll find out anyway, sooner or later. I mean, put it this way, if it does go off, it'll be in the news. Right, the other thing that's on the list is, I'm sure all of you have heard about the citizen hearing on UFO disclosure that's taken place about not too far from Washington, D.C. I think it's just down the road from Washington, D.C. I've been watching a few of these videos during the week. Even they have the ex-Canadian Minister for Defence on talking about what he's seen and what he heard and what he's been involved in. And there's a plethora of, 40 to 50 expert witnesses, military men, navy men, pilots, guys who are working in the nuclear silos, all talking, giving evidence of what they've seen. Stephen Greer's there, Samson Friedman's there. They're all there exposing everything that went on, especially the video with the ex-Canadian Minister for Defence. He actually goes down and talks about the Rockefellers and the press, what he said to the press about staying quiet for 40 years and what they can achieve with the press being on their side and the control. And I have to say, fair play to him for coming out and saying it, because he's really saying everything that we would say. So that's brilliant that he's doing it. So if you haven't seen it, go to YouTube and type in Citizen Disclosure Canadian Minister for Defence and listen to it. It's about 15-20 minutes. Very good what he's saying. It's about time this information came out and it was disclosed. And one of the things I was thinking of is that the last time they did this was the National Press in 2001 when Stephen Greer did it. And a couple of months later, 9/11 happened. And so now they're doing it again. I just hope nothing happens as a false flag to kind of put people off the scent, so to speak. So we have to be careful with that. But it's very interesting all the same. But Steve?
Yeah, it is. It was very interesting. You sent me over the link. I think you sent it out actually in the links to all the registered users, which brings up the topic. If you haven't registered, and it doesn't mean we own your backside. It just means that if you log in and pop your email address in the box, then anytime we get some interesting links, because Alan does, as I say, he does a lot of work behind the scenes. He does kind of sift through a lot of the links that come in, most of them actually, and he kind of sorts out the wheat from the chaff, and he will send out relevant links. He doesn't like to bombard people with a lot of emails, but anything that's relevant he will send out to the registered users. And that's I seen it there this evening, so I did watch that. The guy, he's I can't remember his name. It was a Hilliard or some. It was a weird name anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
Canadian. But it was quite an interesting little documentary, or well, whatever you want to call it. But I'd say it's just under half an hour. It's quite interesting. Yeah, we were going to say that we actually have a general election that's going to be coming up here next year, and we were just kind of thinking that wouldn't it be good if we got the parties, all the parties that are in power now at the moment, and even in the ones that are in opposition, to kind of put their money where their mouth is. We've seen and we've discussed and we've heard from other people as well that I'm not saying the direct democracy party, but the direct democracy style of government seems to work quite well, and the fact that it has built-in recall and it makes sure that politicians actually do what they say they're going to do. And I think if we were to maybe put that to our politicians when come election time, and ask them, say that's what we would prefer, although it was taken out of our constitution, if we had a direct democracy style of government, then it would, it would kind of make them more accountable for what they do, and it would kind of curtail their lies, or at least it would kind of, make the lies, minimalistic, I suppose. But we should definitely ask them for a legally binding or lawfully binding contract, because we know that they're going to lie anyway. And at least if we had the direct democracy style of government, then we would have the recall. So if they didn't come through with their promises, then we would just have to oust them, and they will be gone, and we would put someone else in. And if they were to go for that kind of style of governing the country, then we would be able to see that they do have our best interests at heart. But if they shy away from it and they're not interested, well, then I think we can definitely see the other side of that coin, that they're not really interested in us, and all we are is sheep, or
cannon fodder,
or money making devices for them to
Well, that's the whole idea behind it, and the reason why we were talking about that was because somebody on Facebook said to me about DDI and the party and everything else, and I said, look, let's put these parties, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, whatever, put their money where their mouth is. If they really want to help the people, then ask them to bring in direct democracy and ask them to put recall in. Then you won't have anything to fear. But if they won't do that, then obviously they have self-interest. It's that simple. They can talk the talk, but they have to walk the walk. And if they do it, then we want a legal binding contract, not just a mandate where they can lie, but a legal binding contract to say that they'll do it. It's that simple. So it doesn't matter, what party comes in, because if we do have direct democracy and we have recall, if they don't do the job, we'll get rid of them. It's that simple. So any of the parties, if they bring it in, let's do that. If you get a knock on the door from any of the parties, ask them to bring it in and say, you'll vote for them if you bring it in, and see what they say. And if they say, well, we can't really do that, then we just have to say, well, then obviously you're not interested in helping the people. Simple as that.
So we just load the shotgun and say, well, listen, you've got about 3 seconds to get away from me door.
Yeah, I'm putting you on notice that your employed right of access has been withdrawn, and I can use any... you know where I'm going with that one.
Yeah. A shotgun and a hurley. Yeah. Which one would you like to be hit with?
How's your week, Steve?
My week's been fine. It's a good week, I have to admit. And as I said previously, when you see the little bit of sunshine, you're kind of going to work in the morning, and it's nice. You can see where you're going. There's a bit of sunshine, not a lot of rain, and it does make a big bloody difference, I have to say. I mean, when you see the people out and they're the kids. I mean, the kids are playing now on the street, which is fantastic. When you have the cold, wet, damp, dreary, dismal evenings, and the rain, which we're so used to here in Ireland, all you get is empty streets, and all the kids are in. The only form of exercise or the only games they're playing is on a console, which is never a good thing. But no, they're all out playing, and even as I left the house in a hurried fashion this evening. I was driving down the road, and there was kids out. There was actually kids out on the green, and they're playing football, of which my daughter was one of them. But they were all out there kicking. They weren't actually playing like football. They were just kind of kicking a ball around, really. And they all seemed to be having fun. And it's, when you open the door and you step out into the garden, and you can hear all the kids' voices. You can hear the birds singing in the morning, which is beautiful. And then when you step out the house of an evening, you can hear all the kids' voices. Screaming and running around, and it's just beautiful. It really is. What else was I going to say? During the week, Alan and I were having a bit of a chit chat during the week, and we noticed all the chemtrails. I mean, wow! That's all I can say is wow. We were really inundated, and it actually looked, and it was Alan who coined the phrase here. He said it looked like the red arrows had been flying around overhead, because that's exactly what it looked like. It wasn't the kind of usual one going, say, horizontal, one going vertical, kind of spread out in any particular, like a checkerboard fashion or a noughts and crosses board. These were just going straight across the sky. All kind of parallel to each other, and seemingly a plane had been seen. I asked my wife when I went in, and she said that there had been a plane out spraying these trails, and then he would kind of finish, turn around, and go back in the opposite direction and continue spraying again. So I mean, for anyone looking up and saying, no, there's no spraying going on, I'm sorry, the proof is there. Just open your eyes and look up.
When's the last time did you see a really clear blue sky?
Friday. I'll be honest, it was Friday morning. Friday morning I actually got up and I was going to work, and it was a beautiful clear blue sky. It definitely was. But same scenario, not for long. I mean, after, I'd say by midday, even where I work now in Dublin, by midday there was a couple of trails overhead. Then there was the clouds, and it just kind of it was a bit dark and dismal. Then after that, I think there was a spot of rain too. Now that we have the weather forecast done, what's it like where you are? I don't know. A couple of things to mention here. I have scribbled down on a piece of paper, and it's just that I was watching a video last night from Harry at wethepeople.ie. Harry's a good friend of the show here. He's also a good friend of the lads and lassies over at TNS Radio, and Harry has a new video up explaining the whole situation of the offer, the official offer. A lot of people have heard about it, and some people have. I think Harry did have a video out before, but he's done a new video where it's really broken down into bite-sized chunks, and it's explained very, very well. And I would urge anyone who is maybe finding things a little bit difficult at this moment in time financially, and you have more months left at the end of the money, as they say, it might be an advantage to pop on over to tnsradio.ning.com and just check out the video with Harry. What else am I going to say? The bombing. I'm not going to keep going on about this, but the Boston bomb. I was happy to see during the week that has now finally hit mainstream, although not over here. Well, not none of the mainstream channels in Ireland, but it has hit Russia Today, and I actually watched the video. I think Alan's seen it as well. It really blows the lid off it, and it kind of points out all the inconsistencies with the official version. But it's compact, it's concise. I can't think of the chap's name who done the interview, but he kind of has it down. He has everything down pat, and it's just you look at it, you see all the information is played out in front of you, and I think it's 11 minutes long, the video. We'll try and get a link to that video, Crown, and I'll put that up. But it blows it wide open. I mean, he just kind of he hits on so many nerves. You just can't believe. I mean, Russia Today, they're saying it's a false flag, so there we go. What else? Yeah, seen also on the internet during the week that a company whose products I'm sure we've all used, Johnson & Johnson, they've recently had their license revoked by the FDA in America. Didn't read too much into it myself personally, but it just seems that some of their products that were on shelves, I think it was a best before date on some of them of 2010. Not sure exactly what products were affected, but whatever ingredient was in them, seemingly, because it had run past its shelf life, had now kind of turned into a carcinogen. So, not a good thing. So the FDA have revoked their license. That's what I've heard anyway for the time being. Don't know if they get it back or exactly what's going to happen. And lastly, I was driving home from work at the beginning of this week, and as per usual, anyone who knows, we've often said it before, Alan and I, we generally kind of hook up via radio communications, and we might have a chit-chat on the way home as well. And I had to get petrol, so I pulled into a garage. It wouldn't be the garage I would normally go to, but this garage is much, much cheaper. So I pulled in, filled up. When I say filled up, what I mean is I had €20 in my pocket, and I put €20 in. I didn't fill the tank. I couldn't afford to do that. And the chap in the station, he just commented on, I have a sticker in the back of my car. I have the OYM bumper sticker, and I also have another one there, a picture of Aisling Fitzgibbon. Anyone who knows Aisling, she's the girl against fluoride. Chap in the petrol station, when I went in to pay, he says, "What's that in your car?" And I says, "What's what in my car?" He says, that thing on the window. I said, "Oh, that's Aisling Fitzgibbon." I said, she's doing a nationwide tour trying to educate people against the dangers of fluoride. So he said, "Oh, well, I've heard about fluoride." And I says, "Yeah." And I just kind of gave him a quick 101 in what Aisling is doing and the progress that she's made. And he was fairly tuned in. And I also gave him a plug about OYM as well. And I actually had a couple of Sovereign Independents in the car. The last issue and the previous issue before that had them in the car. So I dropped them into him, and he just going to start flicking through them while it was there, saying he wanted to know if it was an Irish paper or an English paper. Or I said no, it's Irish. It's Irish owned. It's Irish run, and all the information said it's good. It's good information. It's researched, and as much as you're going to hear one side of a story on various media outlets, I said this is kind of the other version of the story. So so therefore you can see both sides of the coin. You'll have a balanced. You'll have balance in the information, so therefore you can make up your own mind instead of it all being pushed at you from one direction only. So that was fine. And we're going to try and at some point in time we're going to try and see if he may be interested in maybe becoming a supplier or an outlet for the Sovereign Independent. But that's maybe further down the pipeline. And I have to say, that's pretty much my week in a nutshell.
That's a good week.
That was a good week.
Normally that's not you. You don't normally say that much, so that's quite good.
No. Wow. I need a drink. I go to the bar.
Have a break. Okay. Will I carry on talking then?
Yeah, I'm having a drink.
Okay, right, okay. Will I go with my week then?
Oh, sorry. So how was your week, Alan?
I'm glad you asked me that, Steve. I'm glad you asked me that. Right, just a few things. For a bit of fun, the song Elvis, Return to Sender. If you go to our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/OYM Internet Radio, we did a little bit of a skit, bit of fun with the wording in Elvis, Return to Sender. So instead of Elvis saying, I put a letter in the mailbox, we changed it to, I put a notice in the mailbox, and then it goes on from there. So if you want to pop over to that after the show, you can do, and have a listen to the rewritten lyrics of Elvis Return to Sender, and it's all got to do with notice and loans and contracts. And so check it out, it's a bit of fun. Okay, the Inland Revenue, obviously you know what's going to happen. They're threatening to take the money out of our bank account because of this property charge. And one of the things I kind of thought about, and I was looking at during the week, is why didn't they do this to the people that owed loads of money during the crash in Nama, the property developers? Why didn't they go in and do it then? Why didn't they have a rule to go in, give the Inland Revenue, the government, and say, go in and get the money? Now, the probably chances are the probably money wasn't there, but then again, it might have been. But so it's okay for the developers and the people with the money to not have a rule, but when it comes to the people that don't have the money, then they make up a rule, a statute, law, so the revenue can go in and take the money out of our bank account. Well, first of all, they have to find out, your bank account details, and I suppose that's the idea of registering, voluntary registering. But again, non-compliance, and don't pay the property charge, and just send it back. Okay, and the other thing, very quickly, before we get our guest on, is I was having a chat with John Irwin. John's going to be on the show in a few weeks' time. John Irwin is the super soldier. And he's in his 70s now. He's living in the UK. And we were talking about a few things on Skype about global issues and the sleight of hand. And he was kind of talking about and mentioning the fact that are we being kind of given a lot of this stuff with the economy, kept busy, struggling, the whole lot, when there's a bigger picture going on and it's being played out that we're not aware of? So basically what John was saying is he reckons there's, he has, I suppose, good information based on his background, thinking that there's something else going on. And all this kind of little bits of challenging the banks and all this kind of stuff, it's all a rouge, it's sleight of hand. So he just said, be aware that there might be something bigger going on in the background that we're not aware of. So, keep your eyes and ears open and look at everything, because there's a possibility that there might be something else going on in the background. He's doing research on that at the moment. But as I say, we're going to have John on in a few weeks' time. I was also talking to Dr. Carol Roslin on Skype as well, regarding a few things that are going on there and a treaty that she's going to get signed. She's going to be coming out and probably doing a blog. I suggested that she should do a YouTube blog because she gets inundated with a lot of people asking her information and emails. So I suggested that she should have kind of a blogging system, a YouTube video blogging, and she thought that was a good idea. So chances are Carol will do that. But she kind of gave me a heads up on a few things that I'm not going to kind of talk about today, but we'll probably talk about in a few weeks' time. things that are going on her side. And she also said that she might get involved in the citizen disclosure because she has information that none of them have. So that might be a good idea. As you know, Dr. Carol Osmond worked with Werner von Braun for 3 years, and she was an ex-missile defence consultant. So she obviously has a bit of information there relevant to what's going on for the disclosure. Okay, without further ado, we're going to get our guest on tonight. And this chap is called Jerry Flynn. Our guest is Jerry Flynn, and Jerry Flynn was ex-military, a captain, I believe, in the military. We clarified that with Jerry when we get him on. And he was specialising in the microwave warfare technology, but as I say, in a different area. But we'll find out more from Jerry. Good evening, Jerry. How are you doing?
Good evening, Alan. Good evening, Stephen. I'm well, thank you.
Good evening, Jerry. Nice to have you on board.
Yeah, Jerry, thanks for coming on the show. And, we want to get more into this technology and find out how dangerous it is. I came across, I think I was sent a link to one of your videos on YouTube, which I found very interesting. And you're obviously campaigning against smart meters and the dangers of the technology. But before we go down there, do you want to give us a background about your military background and your knowledge and experience regarding microwave technology?
Well, I spent 26 years plus 1 day in Canada's military. And I was in the Navy from 1952, and I retired of my own volition in 1978. During that time, of course, our federal government changed hands, and we benefited, if you like, from Pierre Elliott Trudeau as our Prime Minister. And he introduced in Canada something that was reviled by every single person in the military. He merged our Army, Navy, and Air Force into one which was called the Unified Armed Forces, or the Canadian Armed Forces. So I was a product of it. I spent 16 years in the Royal Canadian Navy, very proudly so. Worked my way up through the ranks, went out to prep school, like I was selected for officer training. By the time I graduated, I was no longer in the Navy. I was now a member of the Canadian Armed Forces, a rank at that time of lieutenant, and then I became like a captain. So I spent, I had a very extraordinary background. Now, because of this unification, unlike anybody else who would have spent all of their career either in the Navy or the Army or the Air Force, because of unification, I spent my first 16 years in the Navy, but then I spent the balance in what was called the Canadian Armed Forces, which meant, and I was mainly Army then. And so I found myself doing initially like signals intelligence within NATO for many, many years, 16 years or so. And then I did radio warfare with the Royal Canadian Navy at sea in warships. And then with my commission, I became, as I mentioned, I became a communications electronics engineering officer, and I found myself in the milieu of NATO Army electronic warfare. So I had looking back, I'm very pleased now the way things turned out, given the smart meter stuff, because I'm just that much wiser. But I spent time in, like, Anzio, Italy, with all the NATO electronic warfare officers, all Army but me. And then I spent time in the Black Forest in Germany with all, again, NATO Army electronic warfare units. And, of course, none of them knew that I was essentially like a Navy fellow. So, I bring a very mixed bag. There's none other like me. I'm a bit like Barry Char in that sense, that you can't duplicate me or replicate me.
Okay, well, believe it or not, Jerry, we have our first question in already. And the question is, did he listen to phone calls in the UK?
Did I listen to? No, I did not.
Okay. Now, the fact that you've been involved in signals intelligence, obviously, were you doing any kind of listening? Was that one of the things that you did?
Well, I was part of the family with GCHQ, like your own intelligence service. I was also I worked very closely with the NSA, the National Security Agency, but also like with Australia and to some extent like New Zealand. So we were kind of like an allied force against the Warsaw Bloc countries, Yeah. So we did to them the same thing as they did to us.
Okay. Well, that's hopefully answers the question. The other one was, who did he listen to, and was he at Menwith Hill?
Well, I can't tell you who I listened to, but they were all military. like everything I did was and still is covered by the Official Secrets Act, and therefore I can only speak in very, very general terms. Although, mind you, if you go back in Canada to the Winnipeg Free Press, which is the major newspaper out of Manitoba, they did a couple of exposés which anybody can have or access, and they essentially accused the military of having us do signals intelligence, and that we were focusing on the Russians at that time, according to the Winnipeg Free Press. But like none of us could respond to that either way.
Yeah. Okay. So sorry, do you want to continue on with what you were doing?
Yeah. Well, when I worked my way up through the ranks, insofar as smart meters are concerned, probably the most significant positions I held were 2 years I was in. I was the executive officer, meaning like the 2IC, and also the operations officer. One of our largest, I'll call it an intelligence wireless radio station, where I directly employed something like 200 plus specially trained radio operators and technicians. And I did that for 2 years. I thoroughly enjoyed it, of course. And then from there I was posted into National Defense Headquarters, into the Directorate of Electronic Warfare, which is the highest echelon in electronic warfare in Canada, where, despite my naval background, I found myself as the one and only staff officer, electronic warfare, supporting Canada's Army Electronic Warfare Squadron. So it was with them that I went to Germany to that NATO field exercise. I think it was called Patriot 5611, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah.
Okay. And let's fast forward. When you left the military, tell us how you kind of got into finding out and doing the research on the smart meters.
Well, I retired here in my hometown now, Kelowna, British Columbia, and was very happily. I've set up a workshop in my garage, and I was trying to teach myself how to be a furniture maker, like just for my own use. And so I had quite a collection of nice tools, and I'd had some success. And then one day, out of the blue, my daughter called me on the telephone. She's married with 3 children, and so she and her family and her husband live elsewhere. But she called me to say, Dad, do you know anything about smart meters? And that was now 2.5 years ago. And I said, no, honey, I don't, but I'll look into it for you, thinking it might take me perhaps a morning or an afternoon. Well, that was 2.5 years ago, and Alan and I have not been back to my workshops ever since.
Wow.
It's that scary.
Wow, okay. And tell us what you found out in your research.
Well, first of all, Chuck, where do I begin? I suppose the problem begins with the corruption that exists in the Western countries, and I suppose that starts with the US of A, but Canada is just as complicit. And astonishingly, if your listeners would just Google one name, and that person's name is Repacholi, Repacholi, Dr. Michael Repacholi. He's an Australian by birth, but he came to Canada in 1969. After 2 years in Saskatchewan, he moved to Ontario. He moved right into the federal government of Canada, into what it then was called Health and Welfare Canada, which today is called Health Canada. And he worked right in the radiation protection branch from 1971 to 1971 to 1983 for a total of 12 years. And for the last 7 years, he was the actual director of the radiation protection branch. And so he co-authored our so-called Safety Code 6 guidelines, which determine the exposure limits of radiation that Canadians can be exposed to. Now, this is from all sources, not just a smart meter or a cell phone or a router, but it's from all sources. As it turned out, now looking back, Canada has one of the highest exposure limits in the world, meaning the most dangerous. And then, so after 7 years of being the director of our radiation protection branch, he then moved on and eventually found himself working for the World Health Organization, the WHO. And sure enough, he orchestrated things such that he was appointed as the coordinator for the a 10-year, $250 million team. And this is all on the internet. Anything I tell you, people can see for themselves, okay?
Yeah.
So he set up this project, which was to evaluate or assess the non-thermal, or if you like, biological, low-level effects of radiation on humans, like all living things, but especially humans. And you would think that anybody would choose a very democratic selection of scientists from industry, from the private sector, from independent scientists, from university, etc. He did nothing of the kind. He simply chose industry, that is, industry-paid scientists, and a few like in the WHO, but mainly from industry. He didn't choose a single independent scientist, and their meetings were banned to the media and also to the scientists. So after about 10 years, they established what is called like the WHO's exposure limits, and lo and behold, they're almost identical to Canada's, meaning atrociously high, egregiously high. And then in 1995, he then went over to what he founded was called ICNIRP, the International Commission of the Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, and he became the inaugural chairman, and today he is the chairman emeritus. And so within ICNIRP, he was responsible for establishing ICNIRP's guidelines. Now, as you know, most of Europe have historically followed the example of either the IEEE, like the Institute of Electrical and Electronic Engineers, who are within the, and as you know, there are about 400,000 engineers worldwide, but most of them are in the U.S., 51.4% of them. But within ICNIRP, they have their own committee called the International Committee on Electromagnetic Safety. But if you look at who the members are, it's the U.S. Army, the U.S. Air Force, Nokia, Bell, Alcatel, 5 major cell phone companies like around the world. And so they established the IEEE standards. And so Europe, I mean, including like Ireland, historically they pretty much followed IEEE. But then with the advent of ICNIRP in about 1995, they started to follow ICNIRP's exposure limits. And it's only just last year that the Council of Europe, which as you know is 47 countries, 800 million people, they finally came out and they urged all of their members, all 47 countries, to review their dependence on ICNIRP standards and in fact divorce themselves from ICNIRP and start protecting the people. And they've encouraged all of the European countries to start observing what they call ALARA, which is the as low as reasonably achievable. When you compare whether it's ICNIRP's or the WHO's or Health Canada's, our exposure limits compared to Austria being the safest country in the world with the lowest emission limits, like Canada's 10,000 times higher, meaning it was 10,000 times more dangerous to be here in terms of the overall ambient level of EMR to which we're supposed to be exposed in safety.
It's frightening at the moment. I mean, you're saying that Canada has the highest level. The way we kind of see it is, you know, when they say about safe levels of radiation, is that like, you know, to me that's like saying, you know, if you smoke 5 cigarettes instead of 60 a day, then you won't get cancer. But the fact that you're smoking, you know, is going to probably take longer to get it, but it's an eventuality. So surely, you know, no radiation is better than low radiation.
Well, it's like, I think it's Dr. George Carlo who actually coined the parallel. He said, if you want to think of exposure limits, think of your highway speed limit. If you want to ensure that nobody can break the law, simply set the speed limit on your highway, like the Autobahn, and you use it like a ridiculous number, say 1,000 miles an hour. Well, if you do that, you know that no one can ever break that blinking law. And so what they've done, essentially the same thing with the exposure limits. Thanks to it's the U.S. military-industrial complex influence on governments. They've simply set the limit so high that, like smart meters, for example, that is in Canada now, that is their sole defense. And they say it honestly, unabashedly, that the very little amount that they radiate is well within the guidelines of Safety Code 6, which is like our guideline here in Canada. And of course, they're absolutely correct. So they're not breaking the law at all. And yet the independent scientists know that they're not only killing people, but they're causing huge increases in all health issues, from cancer to leukemia to Alzheimer's to Parkinson's, you name it.
Yeah, I know it's linked to quite a number of medical issues that people have experienced with wireless. And I mean, what is the solution? What do you think the solution is?
Well, first of all, like for example, the Council of Europe, again, 47 countries, 800 million people, they've come out and they've recommended all of their members to reduce the limits down to at least that of, Austria. And there's a brand new report that it was released worldwide. Well, let me give you a bit of a history, if I may. In 2007, and again, this is all on the internet. In 2007, a group of scientists from 5 different countries at that time, they released a report. It was called the Bio Initiative 2007. And in that particular report, which reviewed something like 2,000 independent science-based studies, they came out and said that they urged every country in the world to lower their levels, their exposure limits, down to 0.1 microwatt per centimeter squared, which to the average layman it simply means that in Canada or the UK, we have to reduce our limits by 10,000 times. Now, those same scientists, which was augmented by a lot more scientists in even more countries, and came back 5 years later, in January the 7th of this year, they released to the world the Bio Initiative 2012 report. And now that, I think it has 29 scientists, including 21 PhDs, 10 medical doctors from 10 different countries, including 2 from Canada, included Dr. Yuri Grigoriev, who is he's the chairman of the Russian National Committee for the Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection. It also included Dr. Ole Johansson. Ole Johansson is one of the most outspoken, most respected independent scientists in the world, and he's an associate professor at the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. And so that's just the sample of the pedigree of these scientists that came out in 2007, and this was released to the world. And the conclusion of that particular report, which you can download for free, it says there clearly that the radio frequency, electromagnetic radiation, which we're getting from our cell phones, Wi-Fi towers, cordless phones, baby monitors, like all of these devices, is a human carcinogen. It is not a possible nor a probable, but it is a human, like a category 1 carcinogen. That's the first time in history anybody's ever said that. They also went on to say that the power line electromagnetic frequency, or ELF, like extremely low frequency, that's the power that comes into your house. Like in Britain, or Ireland, it's 50 hertz. here in North America at 60 hertz. So the radiation coming from those substations and the power generating stations and the transmission distribution lines and the electricity coming into your house and that radiation, the magnetic fields and the electric fields from all of your electrical appliances, that too is a human carcinogen. Not a possible, not a probable, it's a definite. And so they've urged every single country in the world to lower their standards down to, I think it's 0.3 nanowatts. Like that's 10 to the minus 9, which for Canada to comply would mean that we would have to reduce our exposure limits anywhere from 3 to 6 million times. That's staggering. Like where is Health Canada?
Well, exactly. I mean, you know yourself as much as we do that these companies and a lot of these kind of independent groups who do the research are possibly funded by the mobile phone companies or, you know, the government or somebody who has a vested interest in having this technology out there.
If you look in Canada, for example, we're just I'm sure that we're just a carbon copy on smaller scale than what exists like in Europe, certainly in the States. But in Canada, there's an organization called the Canadian Wireless Telecommunications Association. The initials are CWTA. Well, that's the main lobby group in Canada that lobbies on behalf of the industry. Well, you only have to look at who is the incumbent president and CEO. In Canada's case, it happens to be Bernard Lord, L-O-R-D. He's a Queen's Counsel lawyer. He's received the Order of New Brunswick, which is a province in Canada, one of the 10 provinces. And he used to be the premier there for 2 consecutive governments, like majority governments. And I think he did an excellent job, the best I know. But he's he's a card-carrying member of the Progressive Conservative Party. Even he and Stephen Harper are prime minister on a first-name basis. This Bernard Lord, and again, it's all on the internet. Just Google his name. Fluently bilingual. He attended a major national conference in Edmonton, Alberta, I think in 1997, when they were trying to choose the leader of the party who became the prime minister. He made a very impassioned speech to the entire audience, caused them to stand up and take notice of him, and so he is reputed to be on the short list of successors for Stephen Harper when he eventually retires or moves out of the scene. So he is now the president and CEO of this CWTA, and he, more than any other single person, is responsible for the promotion and the growth of the wireless technology industry in Canada. It's because of him that all public schools cannot say no to wireless. I mean, he brings tremendous push and influence. He's also, like, one of our major telephone companies in Canada is called TELUS, which is based in British Columbia, in Vancouver. Well, Stockwell Day is another name. He used to be the head of the Reform Party. He and Stephen Harper are close personal friends. He's a member of Stephen Harper's cabinet. He retired just fairly shortly, and doesn't he end up on the board of directors for TELUS Corporation? So, I mean, the paths and the palms are greased for anything they want. And just like in the U.S., where with the passage of Bill 1976, 1996, it was called the Telecommunications Act of 1996. That was done by Senator John McCain. The wireless and telecom industry in the U.S., they lobbied so heavily against Congress that they got John McCain to pass this doggone bill in the U.S., which took away the authority of any state government to deny any telephone company to come in and install a cell phone tower wherever they wanted. And so as of 1996, the cell phone companies in the U.S., they can install their cell phone towers with impunity anywhere they want, and they do so on the basis of it's in the interest of national defense or national security. Well, essentially the same thing happens here in Canada. We used to have a kind of a guideline where the cell phone towers had to be 15 meters tall. And so when they were 15 meters tall or taller, it kind of behooved the industry, the cell phone companies, to, if nothing else, only out of courtesy, liaise with the municipal government and to advise them that they're going to be putting this tower or what. But I guess the industry found that a bit of a nuisance and tedious, so they simply started to install their towers 14.9 meters tall. And now they can do it with impunity. So, and it's really shocking because if the more people look, like I always say, I've now spoken to 20 different communities across British Columbia, and I tell all the audiences, like, knowledge is strength. Do yourself a favor, get on the internet, look for yourself. Try to prove me wrong, because the harder you try, the more you'll see that I'm correct.
That's a very good approach, Jerry. I've never thought of that. When people do turn around and say to you, you know, you're talking rubbish, you say, well, you go on the internet and prove me wrong then. That will educate them, so that's a very good approach. And I bet the people who are obviously like this chap Lord, who are, you know, pushing out the wireless technology, I bet where they live, you'll probably find there's no mobile masts around their house.
Well, if they're informed, I would agree with you. I just got this slide up on my screen at the moment, Alan, to illustrate to your listening audience. In terms of public exposure guidelines, meaning the amount of radiation that you should be subjected to, but not more than, for the 1800 megahertz band, okay, this is all now in microwatts per meter squared, so the unit of measurement does not matter because they're all in the same. Salzburg, this is Austria, in 2002, they set a limit that for inside your home, a unit of 1. That's 1 microwatt per meter squared. Salzburg for outside, like once you go outside your house, they set a limit of 10. The European Parliament in 2001 set a limit of 100. Salzburg in 1998, from all sources, they set a limit of 1,000. Italy, for single frequency, is 1,000. Russia and China are 10,000. Italy, the sum of all frequencies, is 100,000. Belgium is 1,115,000. ICNIRP and the WHO is 9 million. FCC, which is the Federal Communication Commission in the U.S., and the IEEE, and Canada, they're all 10 million. Compare that to Salzburg of 1, and we're 10 million.
Mm. I don't know, it's just incredible. I'm going to pass you over to Steve, and Steve is he has a few questions here for you. So, Steve, shoot away there.
Right, all good information. It's all educational. So far, a lot of good comments coming in on the chat facility and some questions as well. One of the questions, Jerry, is from Lucid. He's one of our regular listeners to the show. He's wondering, are there any cheap ways to lessen the effects from Wi-Fi coming through a flat that's beneath him? And he's heard that aluminium foil may be useful, but is aluminium foil useful against blocking out Wi-Fi, or do you have any suggestions that he could use?
Well, I think that's a very good question. I get asked that all the time, and I especially feel sorry for people that live in flats or apartment buildings, because it's just, it's almost unimaginable what they're being exposed to. To begin with, the electric utilities here in North America, they're guilty of misinformation, and I will answer that question, but they're guilty of misinformation, disinformation, and outright lies. They would have you believe that inside a smart meter there's only the one transmitter, when in actual fact inside every smart meter, at least in North America, and the ones I've looked at, like in Europe and Australia and New Zealand, there are two. There's the one called the local area network, like the LAN, and that one radiates for 3 kilometers. So the one in that shafts up the flat, that radiates for 3 kilometers. But so does everybody else's smart meter also radiates for 3 kilometers. So that not only is his particular, that one and only transmitter radiating every other neighbor within the 3 kilometer range, meaning all the other flats as well, But similarly, his flat is not only enduring his own radiation, but he's enduring that from everybody else's, whether they're in a flat or in a house, within that 3-kilometer radius. Now, the utility don't even want you to know about the second transmitter inside. It's called a ZigBee, Z-I-G-B-E-E. It operates on 2.45 gigahertz, which is the same frequency as your microwave oven, which is the same frequency as that baby monitor, believe it or not, which is the same frequency as your Wi-Fi router and your cordless phone, and all of your TV games like your Wii and the Xbox. They're all on the same frequency, 2.4 gigahertz, which is one of the most dangerous frequencies, period. These ZigBee, they have a range of approximately 250 feet radius. Now, the utilities do not, and I should say, the purpose for the ZigBee is to control what they call a HAN, a Home Area Network, HAN, Home Area Network. And what the utilities envision is that as your appliances in your home eventually wear out, such as your fridge and your stove and your washing machine, your drying machine, your carburetor, and your TV sets and your hot water tank and your furnace, air conditioner, all of these devices. And in North America, the electric utilities envision every home having anywhere up to 15 or more smart appliances. Now, each of these, and by the way, they are for sale. Last year in 2012, 613 million of them were sold. $613 million worth. The Pikes survey did a survey just last year, and they envisaged that by 2020, the value of smart appliances being sold will escalate up to $34.9 billion. So they clearly see every home having, say, typically 15 or more smart appliances. Now, that if you just stop and think of just one apartment or one house, you're going to have 15 appliances. Each of them will have its own transmitter, which will transmit on exactly the same frequency as your microwave oven. And then the smart meter itself is going to have two, like the local area network and the ZigBee. So that means that every flat, every home will have 17 pulsing microwave transmitters. Now, the electric utilities, they talk in terms of a meshed grid network. To them, a meshed grid means at least 500 homes, but up to as many as 5,000 homes. So for simple arithmetic, let's just talk about 500 homes, which could be 500 flats. And if you're in a highly congested area where there's nothing but high-rise apartment buildings or flats, you could easily have 500 flats in just a couple of block area, really, or maybe in like a 1-block area. So in just 500 homes, you'll have 8,503 pulsing transmitters, 8,001 of which will pulse away on the same frequency as your microwave oven. And by the way, these are more dangerous than the microwave oven because these all pulse. There's nothing more injurious to the human body or any living thing than a pulsed microwave signal. Your microwave oven does not pulse.
Jesus, that's
isn't that? I mean, that's
that
scary.
Is amazing.
That actually boggles the mind. You couldn't imagine a worse. I couldn't imagine a worse fiendish mind coming up with those sort of numbers. And see, the utility simply tells you that the radiation is well below the allowable limit. And of course, they're absolutely correct. So the only way they're going to put them out of business is if indeed these so-called regulatory bodies like the IEEE and the FCC and the WHO and ICNIRP and Health Canada are made to be responsible, are made to divorce themselves from industry and establish levels that the human or any living thing can tolerate. When you realize that in terms of the human body, for example, you've got, where have I got it here? Like the human brain has a resonant frequency range of from just 1 hertz to 30 hertz. The human heart has a resonant frequency of 2 hertz. The human body, or for that matter the planet Earth, has a resonant frequency of 7.83 hertz. Now we're talking just units now. We're not even talking double digit, just a single unit. You think of your 50 hertz coming into your power coming into the house. Well, these are even much lower than that. So when you start bombarding them with pulsed microwave radiation, which is intermittent, such as you get from a smart meter, or any of these wireless devices, it plays absolute havoc. And the evidence is absolutely insurmountable. They've had, thankfully, like the European scientists have now had 40 years to study cell phones. So they now know, beyond any shadow of a doubt, the evidence is there. It's chronicled that, well, they did a 10-year study of cell phones in Europe primarily, from 1999 to 2009, and from just that 10-year period, they know that the incidence of brain cancer or tumor increased by 50%.
That's staggering.
Well, you know that Barry Trower, you've had him on a couple of times,
yeah.
And I have the highest regard for Barry. If there was such a thing as having a hero, he'd probably be my hero. But like he has said, and I'm going to quote you here, but he has said that this will be like a genocide. Let me see here. What is this comment? But essentially he said this will be a genocide, the worst of any that planet Earth has ever experienced. That the people responsible, here it is, and this is a quotation from Barry Trower. In 2012, this industry, meaning the telecom and the wireless, and now of course the electric utility industry, they say this industry and those parts of governments, which in our case are like Health Canada and to some degree Industry Canada, and so this industry and those parts of governments which are encouraging them will be responsible for killing more people than all those killed in the entire Second World War. This will be the worst genocide this planet has ever known. Not just people, but plants and animals. The UK, the US, Canadian, and Australian governments are lying to the public to protect themselves against lawsuits and to make money for industry. And I believe him entirely.
It is frightening. Sorry, Steve, it is frightening. But one of the questions we have, it kind of leads into what you're saying there. It's lucid there, Steve. You're just going to say
there. Which one? This one?
Top one, yeah.
Yeah. Well, can I just make a comment? I just want to read this comment out before I go to that question. It just kind of follows on from what you're saying. Mick just commented in and he said that sleeping with a mobile phone or Wi-Fi near you is detrimental to your brain's ability to produce melatonin, and that you need complete darkness to produce the melatonin, and Wi-Fi signals are interpreted by your brain as light, so it obviously can affect your sleep pattern. But Lucid's question is, why does Jerry think the limits are higher in our countries then? Would it be anything to do with mind control or social mobility?
Well, another very good question, and like I've done quite a bit of reading, like you and Alan and Steve have. The more you look, the scarier it gets. And I know, for example, like the British military intelligence, they've done some quite devious things with this microwave. Like I mentioned to you, like the frequency of the brain. Well, I'll give you a very good example, and again, I can refer you back to Barry Trower. The frequency of the brain is 1 to 30 hertz. So when you're sound asleep, the resonant frequency of your brain is probably closer to the 1. But when you're awake and very, very active, it could be much, much closer to the 30 hertz. Well, I think it's Motorola. They're the scientists that developed the Tetra. And Tetra is an acronym that stands for terrestrial radio. But Tetra is being used, actually according to Barry Trower, it's being experimented. This is like an experiment ongoing, and it's not due to complete for another close to 5 years. But the major utilities in the world, so if I recall, he said something like 120 countries are using Tetra, and they don't know what the devil they're doing. And here in Canada, especially like in British Columbia, we have two electric utilities, the larger being BC Hydro. It's a provincial crown corporation. And last year, they announced with some fanfare that they are bringing in Tetra to BC Hydro. Now, that particular Tetra radio system will operate on the high end of the 400 megahertz band, but the modulation is going to occur at roughly like 17 hertz. Well, shucks, that's right smack in the middle of the brain. And so why they're doing that, I haven't the foggiest idea. I know that Barry, he represented I think it was the police, the unionized police force in Britain against them having to use Tetra there. And I'm just really regurgitating what I've heard him say, but I do believe him that you can indeed dumb somebody down. You can indeed control their mind. It's a very, very scary thing. And here in Canada, we're just bringing this doggone Tetra into BC, and I'm absolutely certain that the utilities do not have the expertise to understand the stupidity of what they're doing.
Yeah, as Barry Trower, as he said to us, Jerry, that it was, although we were kind of told that it's just a more secure form of radio communication, that the Tetra system for our Gardaí over here, and obviously the police forces in other countries. But as he did say, it was actually, and he obviously testified to this, it's an 18-year medical study of the effects of the radiation and nothing else. So people think it's a great form of communication, it's secure, but that's kind of that's a byproduct, if you like, of a medical experiment that's going on without our knowledge.
Yeah, and what I find astonishing is that, well, like, we're fairly heavily unionized here as you are there, and I'm just astonished that somehow, some way, the unions don't find out about it and protest. Like, if I were a member of the BC Hydro, I would simply refuse to accept one like to wear it. Of course, naturally, I'd be fired.
Yeah, but Jerry, the problem is with wireless technology, whether it's Tetra, mobile phones, it's so integrated into society now. If the governments were to turn around and go, oh, by the way, like thalidomide and asbestos, if they turned around and said, oh, we've just found out that this technology is dangerous, then the lawsuits alone would cripple the government.
Absolutely.
So it's in their interest, and obviously that's what they're doing, in pleading ignorance and just saying, no, it's fine. I mean, they're never going to turn around. We contacted through email the Garda Representative Association, which is they're supposed to represent the police, and we sent in the relevant information to them to say, do you know that this is actually dangerous? And we didn't get any email back, any notification or acknowledgement. So maybe they are, the GRA who represent the police, are being controlled.
I would accept that.
And like any other group.
Yeah, let me give your listeners just some very useful information, again, which they can verify. Are you familiar with the Amish?
Yeah.
They're associated with the Mennonites.
We know them, yeah.
Okay, well, as you know, they shun electricity.
Yeah.
Well, I just recently added another tile to my PowerPoint presentation here, that in the U.S., compared to the national average, the Amish, when it comes to attention deficit disability, ADD, or ADHD, they have 0 occurrences of ADHD in the Amish community. When it comes to allergies, they only have 7.2% of the U.S. national average, those who use electricity. When it comes to Alzheimer's, they have no history, 0 of Alzheimer's within the Amish community. They have virtually nothing and no autism. They just don't know it. Cancers, they have 56% of the national rate of cancer. Diabetes, they have 40% of the national rate of diabetes. Dementia is very, very low to almost non-existent. Suicide, they have 50% of the national rate. And that's simply because it is thought that they shun electricity. I have on one of my slides here, I have a wonderful, wonderful slide. It shows power transmission lines or distribution lines. And it shows a whole field, and I mean a huge field as far as the eye can see, all underneath these power transmission lines. And somebody, to illustrate a point, which you've done extremely well, has simply inserted into the ground fluorescent tubes, which are, I'm guessing, maybe 6 feet long, perhaps 8 feet long, and they simply stick them into the ground and make sure that they're vertically, like, upright. And these are directly under the transmission lines. And there have got to be many hundreds of these, okay? There could be 500 of them, literally. And every single one of them lights up at night, strictly from the radiation, like the magnetic field, or the leakage, if you like, from the transmission lines overhead.
Yeah, they did this. Remember the campaign they had around the locality where they wanted the electricity company to put the power lines on the ground, and they had a picture of a few people with fluorescent tubes with them up in the air, and the tubes were actually lit up. They were underneath the pylons, and these tubes were actually lit up, and that's what they were making a statement saying, that they're dangerous because these tubes can be lit up, and that's the kind of RF, I suppose, coming off the power lines.
Yeah. There's something else like autism, for example. That's increased by 600% in the last 20 years. 600%. ADD has increased by 400%. Asthma, 300%. Very, very alarming is the average man has lost 53% of male sperm in just the past 50 years. And the scientists predict that if this continues at this rate, that within 70 years, man will not be able to procreate. Another very, very shocking thing that I present, that in North America, like especially in Toronto, which is the capital city of Ontario, and our largest city, 4 or 5 million people, that the incidence of autism just 30 years ago used to be 1 in 10,000 people suffered from autism. 1 in 10,000 people. Today it's 1 in 88. I find that absolutely shocking. And yet, like, our health officials turn a blind eye to that. It's really bad. And then when you look at what happens to all the birds and the bees and the butterflies over the last 25 years, it's just frightening. The species that have already become extinct and the others that are under severe threat.
Tell us, Jerry, there's obviously a sinister plot involved in what they're doing. I mean, they know what they're doing, and they're ignoring the health warnings and people who know about this technology. Have you done any research, or have you looked into what could be behind this?
Well, because I've now spoken at 20 different communities across British Columbia, I've had actually quite a few people come up to me at different places and advance that sort of a theory, like the conspiratorial theory. And I've been somewhat resistant to go that far. Like when initially I used to think that, oh, this person is just a little daft or just a little imaginative or whatever. But like more and more people are advancing similar theories to me, to the point where I like where I have difficulty, Alan, is when you think that EMR, or like radiation, it knows no bounds. So like if I were a devious person and I lived in your community, I can't orchestrate something that will radiate you but save me. So like I have to think of these evil people who are allegedly doing this kind of stuff. And I have to tell myself that, like, they're living in this world as well. They can't escape it any more than I can. So that's the only thing that's kind of allowing me to not buy into entirely. And yet, in support of what you're alluding to, one of Canada's most famous and most respected scientists is a woman in Trent University. Her name is Dr. Magda, Magda, Havas, Havas, and she's an expert witness in various countries. She's actually spoken in, I think, 120 countries. But even she has just recently come out with a video, like a YouTube, where she's picked up on this conspiratorial theory where there's somebody that wants to control the population of the earth. They think that we're getting too populated and there's not enough food to supply them. And so she's put out actually quite a convincing video, which I would encourage your viewer or your listener, to just Google her name and you'll come across her video.
Yeah, we did talk about this during the week. You see, obviously, myself and Steve have interviewed a number of people regarding this conspiracy, if you want to call it that. And, you know, they have cures for a lot of things which they won't obviously give out because the pharmaceutical companies make a fortune out of selling drugs to people. So, although there are people involved, say the higher rankings of this group who want to do this, should they come across anything that, if they are affected by this technology, who's to say that they don't have the technology themselves to fix whatever they have that's wrong with them, but they keep that knowledge to themselves?
That's entirely possible, of course. But you mentioned frequencies and you mentioned diseases and you mentioned cures. Have you heard the name Royal Raymond Rife?
Yeah, we actually have that on their website. For registered users, if you log into the website, there's information about Royal Raymond Rife and his work with the Rife microscope and what he did in the 30s, curing people of, I think he started off with whooping cough and then he progressed on to cancer.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and there's a number of people, like Royal Raymond Rife, does Dr. What's his name, Steve? Beck? Bob Beck?
Bob Beck, yeah.
Bob Beck is another chap, he's a physicist. Then Ricky Simpson with the hemp oil. Then we have Dr. Lorraine Day, who we had on the show. She is a medical doctor from America, and she came on. And we had Bernadette Bowen, who's a nutritionist. Dr. Lorraine Day actually had cancer, and Bernadette Bowen had cancer twice. And they both cured themselves, or should we say, put it in...
Spontaneous remission.
Spontaneous remission, because we can't say cured. And they got rid of the cancer. And so there's a lot of people out there who have alternative methods to attack cancer and cure cancer. But obviously, with the pharmaceutical companies making €50,000 per person on cancer drugs, it's not in their interest to find a cure for it.
Well, in the case of Royal Raymond Rife in particular, his nemesis was the disreputable president of the American Medical Association, who personally and almost single-handedly destroyed him.
Yeah, totally. I mean, the man was a genius in what he did.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and there's a lot of people out there who have come up with alternative ways. But as long as we have this control, and pharmaceutical companies are controlling the system, I mean, the whole idea of what, again, if you want to look at the conspiracy, why these chemicals are being put in, we're sidetracking a little bit, but why the proteins in the food we eat today, there's very little proteins in it, and it's full of chemicals. If that makes us sick, then obviously we need drugs to cure ourselves. So it's logical that, you know, that would be their kind of game plan. And of course the wireless technology is again the same thing. If you get a tumour or cancer and you have to go to a doctor, you have to get chemo or get drugs, you know, the principle is the same, because there's no money in healthy people. There's only money in sick people.
That's exactly right.
You know, so all this kind of with the wireless technology now, we had Walter Graham, the videos of Walter down in my house and checking the house for signals. He has a thing called a smog detector. And as I say, the videos are on YouTube, and Walter went around and he checked my deck phone, he checked my Wi-Fi, he checked my microwave. And myself and Steve, since that time, have removed all of these from our house. We don't have microwaves, we don't have deck phones, we don't have wireless anymore. It's all wired. And so we have kind of... Now, you can't get away from this, as you know, Jerry, you can't get away from it, but you can reduce it as much as you can. Now, I went down to my local school, my son's school, and I wanted to hold a meeting and have Walter come down and talk at the meeting. And I suggested to the head teacher that she gets permission because, you know, sometimes they can be a bit funny. And straight away they came back and said, no, you can't have a meeting. There wasn't any questions of, well, what's this about? Why is it dangerous? What evidence do you have? There was none of that at all. It was just completely blank. No, you can't do it.
That's terrible.
And I bet, to be honest with you, if all the listeners who are listening to the show, if they have kids in their school and they go to the school, chances are they'll be shut down straight away as well. Because there's a big push on over here in Ireland. Pat Robert is our communications minister, and they've just got 850 million off the 4G networks to 850 million in their treasury from the 4G networks wanting to set up the 4G masts and the technology. So there's no way the government are going to be interested in telling people that wireless technology is dangerous. And because they want to roll out broadband in all the schools, that's probably going to be part and parcel of it as well.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to pass you over to Steve. We have a few more questions there.
Go ahead.
Sorry, did you want to make a comment first, Jerry?
That's okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, in relation to all the Wi-Fi devices, yeah, we have removed them from both our homes. But I just want to kind of jump back a little bit in time, Jerry, to a previous question. Even though I don't have Wi-Fi enabled in my home, I don't have a DECT phone, it's all wired. I still, if I switch on, I have one of these phones, and you know you can pick up the Wi-Fi on the phone, and every so often, depending on what room I'm in the house, if I switch it on, it will detect Wi-Fi from neighbours' homes, and some of the signals can be as strong. Like I think that they give a little reading as to how strong the signal is, and depending on where I am, some of the signals can be as strong as 42%. And that kind of goes back to the previous question. Is there anything that we can do? I know there are special paints you can get, but do you have any other suggestions as to things you can do in and around the home to try and reduce or prevent, say, neighbours' Wi-Fi signals penetrating into your home?
Well, no, I only know what you know concerning that paint, which I read about, and I can't personally recommend anything. I can only pass on, like you, Steve, what I've come upon in my own research. But there's just yesterday and today, I've come upon two websites that you might want to look at, and they're www.smartmeters.com, GUARD.com. Yeah. Smartmetersguard.com, and these are they show two different devices there. And these are like I think they're like a toque or a sleeve that you put over the meter, and they're a screen material, much the same like a screen off your screen window, but only with metal screen as opposed to fabric. The dimensions of which, supposedly are the same frequency, the wavelength of your the 900 megahertz transmitter, like the local area network. And according to the engineer, he claims to be a professional engineer, though I can't vouch for him personally. He claims that it'll reduce it by at least 95%.
Well, 95% is good. I mean, as I say, if it does exactly what it says on the tin, it could be a good investment.
Yeah, but then again, that fellow that phoned up the first caller asking about his flat, there's no point in him trying to safeguard his place when he's being greedy by all of his doggone neighbors. It's one of those things where, like, everybody has to appreciate the dangers, so they stand together, like united, collectively, and simply either refuse or collectively, resort to using these so-called meter cards.
Yeah. Well, over here, Jerry, it's not over here. I think it's actually an American website, refusesmartmeters.org, I think is the name. And we were onto them. They have some good information on their site, and we actually got some stickers. And the idea is that you put the sticker on your meter in your home, or see, the way the houses are here, your meter is it's generally in a box. I'm not sure if it's the same in the US or in Canada, but the meter is generally in a box on the side of your home, encased in a wall with a little door. So you open the door, the meter's in there, and in most homes on the other side of that meter is either your hallway or your sitting room, your family room, or I'm not sure what you would call it there. But we have these stickers, and you put these stickers on the meter, and it just says, please do not install smart meter here. And there's a lot of people, and they have got these stickers, and a lot of people have just put notices in where the meter is, so when the meter reader comes around, they know that they're not interested, so they're kind of refusing. And then only recently our electricity supply board, which is the ESB for short, they have come out with an announcement to say that anybody who refuses or gets in the way of any of their engineers installing a smart meter will be fined. There'll be a €5,000 fine. I don't know what that is in dollars, but it's a big fine.
Wow.
I don't know if they can enforce that or exactly how we stand, but I mean, if we have the information to prove that these are dangerous and they want to put them in our home, I suppose it could end up in an interesting case. But we actually heard as well that they have rolled out installing smart meters in an area of Ireland, a village yet to be. We still don't know where the village is, but they've seemingly rolled out the smart meters. They're kind of on test there before they try and do it through the rest of the country.
Can I just jump in there? An email came in during the week from one of our listeners who said that the local, I won't call it an employment agency, but FOSS.
Yeah.
I suppose, you know what FOSS is, training employment agency, government training employment agency, are looking for water meter installers, apparently. Now, I haven't checked it out, but this is what I was told by one of our listeners during the week.
So they're actually they're recruiting people to install them?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, my only concern, as I say, one of the concerns that I have is now knowing what I know about these smart meters. I'm just going to jump back in time. I remember a long time ago, we had cable TV, or piped TV, as it was called here, Jerry, and there was a cable that ran. There was a junction box at the end of a road, and the cable ran from house to house to house, and it carried the pipe or the cable TV signal. And if you had to pay a fee, if you didn't want the cable running across your property, you could ask them to remove it, and then they had to find an alternative means, maybe bring it out onto the main street, dig up a channel, bury the cable, and then get it to your neighbour's house. So generally what they used to do was they'd offer you free cable if you allowed them to leave the cable in place. And I'm just wondering, would we have the same, or could we have the same pull with the electricity companies if they want to put a smart meter, and we say, okay, well, I'm not refusing the meter, but I don't want it there, so I'd ask you to put it somewhere outside my home. I wonder, they probably wouldn't do it though, would they?
Yeah, but Jerry said earlier, the signal, if there's two signals coming from the meter, remember what you said earlier, Jerry?
Well, like here in Canada, our meters are put on the outside of the house, and because of our climate, they're exposed. But essentially they're the same as yours. That is, the electric company can access them easily without having to come into the home. But one of the options they're offering here is they'll move that meter, say, to the end of your driveway, or they'll put it elsewhere on your property if you have some, like a private lot or acreage. But they'll do so like at your expense, which can be quite prohibitive. But as Alan indicated just a moment ago, it's futile because of the radiation. They radiate for 3 kilometers. So, but like this is where like even the utilities themselves don't know the dangers of these doggone meters. They're not aware of, and they don't appear to be at all interested in hearing that these things will radiate for 3 kilometers.
Yeah, and the other thing that we haven't really touched base on with the smart meters is the data protection, because we also know from these smart meters that they can report on a lot of things, i.e. how many people are in the house, when you have a shower, when you put the kettle on, etc., etc., etc. And there's a data protection issue with this as well.
Well, even with current technology, they can do that. Back in the military, and this is part of my background way back, but I mean, so the technology has advanced ever so much since then. But if you were to talk to somebody current in electronic warfare, they would tell you that even without the smart meter, it's called radio fingerprinting. It's the same sort of technology that submariners use in submarines, where they're listening to, in their case, very low frequencies down about like the 30 hertz range, of submarine, but they can tell by the signature of each motor, whether it's an aircraft carrier, a tanker, or a freighter, or a pleasure craft, a ferry, or whatever, and they can identify the doggone thing. And that's 60, 70-year-old technology. Today, and like also even in the military, back in my day, I could look at this an oscilloscope, okay, where I'm looking at a whole band of frequencies. The band might be, and remember my technology is outdated now, but I could be looking at, say, several megahertz. And so any emission of any type that appears will pop up like a spike on my screen. And I could identify that from the pulse repetition frequency, the pulse repetition rate, the frequency. I could tell you, and the duration, of course, and I could tell you what that doggone pulse was. So they can, even with today's technology, before the doggone smart meter, they can tell whether your electric kettle is on, or your bathroom fan is on, or your fridge is on, or the freezer cycle is on, or the dishwasher. And that's before the doggone smart meter. But now that you mentioned the smart meter, it's been admitted in the California Court of Law. In California, they have three major utilities, but the largest is the Pacific Gas and Electric, known as PG&E. And they're the kind of the trial horse in the U.S. And so we, being on the West Coast as well, like British Columbia, we emulate them to a huge degree. Only we have just like maybe a 10th or 20th of their population. But they've had all kinds of lawsuits and trials. But they admitted in a court of law that first of all, that smart meters are transmitting virtually non-stop, 24 hours a day, 365 days of the year in perpetuity, whereas the utility will tell you that they're only sending customer data maybe 4, perhaps 6 times a day for a total cumulative time of maybe a minute or slightly more, implying, of course, that it's totally benign, absolutely harmless, when nothing further could be from the truth. The fact that these things, they admitted in a court of law, just that land transmitter, remember like the local area network, the one that operates on 900 megahertz?
Yeah.
In the court of law, they admitted that the average meter pulses 14,000 times a day, up to a maximum of 190,000 pulses per day. And they also, Silver Springs Network, which is a major manufacturer, they actually make these radios, in like the land radio and the Zigbee. They admitted to the California Public Utilities Commission. This is entirely separate incident, but they admitted to the California Public Utilities that their transmitters are on all the time. And the reason they're on all the time is because it's a wireless system, and you're looking at, well, anywhere from 500 to the smallest community, up to 5,000 for the largest community. And so all of these wireless meters must maintain synchronicity. They must, they say here that they're transmitting continuously, even though they only upload customer data 6 times a day. They are continuously chatting with each other every few seconds in order to authenticate and keep the network synchronized. So that blows holes through the argument from your utility that there's very, very little radiation. The thing is, they're being radiated almost constantly.
Okay, well listen, Jerry, we have about 10 minutes left, so we're going to quick fire a few questions over to you. One of the listeners said that he has a set of infrared headphones, wireless infrared, and he wanted to know if infrared was one of the frequencies that he should be avoiding.
Let me look. Yeah, I've got the spectrum up in front of me. Well, I mean, like the cutoff between the ionizing and the non-ionizing is where the visible light is. And so infrared is just below that, which means it's higher than microwave. It would have to be dangerous because, like, the higher the frequency, the more energy it packs into, the more deeply it will penetrate. And look, and I'm not a scientist, nor am I'm not an expert witness, but in my humble opinion, I think it'd be extremely dangerous. Like, for example, if you take just Bluetooth, and Bluetooth is the same frequency as you know as 2.4 gigahertz, at least here in North America. And people wear these Bluetooth earphones, like on their head, and they're much more dangerous than a cell phone, simply because the transmitter is there all the time, like constantly. So even if you're not on a telephone, like a telephone conversation, you're still being transmitted or radiated by your own headphone, which is right against your brain. So the infrared, my personal advice, absolutely, I think it would be even more dangerous.
Well, I know that the guideline that Barry gave us was, he said, anything over 300 megahertz is microwave.
Yes, that's right.
So infrared, I'm not too sure what frequency that's on.
Well, that's 10 to the, let me just see here, I'll tell you. That's 10 to the, well, see, microwave is up to 10 to the, well, the end of the microwave between, let me see, ultraviolet is 10 to the 15. So, visible light is 10 to the 14. And so, yeah, infrared would be 10 to the 12. So that's much higher than, say, the conventional microwave. I think that'd be terribly dangerous.
Okay, so that... Go ahead.
Using a headset?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, that's the answer for the listener who has the headphones. Don't be using infrared headphones. Somebody's just put up there. Here are the specs of the headphones. Straight away, the frequency of his headphones is 863 to 865. Well, Steve, it's anything over 300 megahertz, and you're up at 800. So yes, definitely you're in the microwave technology danger zone.
For sure.
Steve, okay, you got questions there? Quick sheet questions for Jerry?
Yeah, this is kind of a strange one. I actually thought I knew the answers to this one, Jerry, but I guess I don't. It's from another Steve, and he's wondering about these smart meters. Will the power company install a smart meter on your property if you are not on the grid, if you get your power elsewhere? And he said, apparently, if you have... I would have said, no, if you're getting your power elsewhere, well, then they wouldn't need to put a meter on your property. But he says, apparently, if you have 4 walls and a roof, you have to have a meter installed, regardless of how you get your power. I've never heard that before. I wonder, Steve, are you in... what part of the world are you in where that applies? Is it here, is it the US, or... I've never heard of that. Jerry, have you heard of that?
Well, here in Canada, certainly I can speak specifically to BC, of which I am quite knowledgeable. The legislation that was passed by the government mandated the 2 electric utilities that they must, and I say must, install smart meters on every dwelling in the province, every building, every occupied building. So, like, if you're out, let's say you own a farm or a ranch somewhere and you've got many acres all around you, you still have to have a smart meter. But the thing is, your physical surroundings or your geography may be such that there's not another wireless within 3 kilometers from you, in which case the wireless does you no good. Like, your usage data must get back to the utility wherever that is located. So as long as there's not another smart meter within your proximity. Now, mind you, they could use repeaters, which means they could install another meter on a pole or a series of poles. That's what they call a distributed antenna system. They could install these almost like a telephone pole, only not quite as tall, at regular intervals as necessary to ensure that your microwave data gets back to the utility. But here, and here's the thing, that there's a lot of lawsuits going on over here. See, up until the Bill 17, which occurred in 2010, was mandated or legislated, we all had analog meters like you folks did, I guess. And the legislation said that the utilities must install smart meters, but they did not stipulate that it must be wireless. They could have said fiber optic. They could have said twisted wire pair. They could have said coaxial cable, but they simply left it open. And it's the fact that the utilities have taken it upon themselves to unilaterally select this most dangerous technology, which is wireless, that is the problem. So people are rejecting them on the basis that, look, there is not a law on the books anywhere that says you can install, even up until this latest Bioinitiative Report 2012 came out, as I see, on January the 7th, which actually stipulated that wireless radiation is indeed a carcinogen. Even till then, the WHO of 2011 stated that it is a possible carcinogen. And so the argument from these people is that, look, no one authorized you to put a possible cancer-causing transmitter on my building. And so that's the technical objection that we're trying to make here.
Okay, Steve?
Yeah, and we just found out that our other Steve is actually in Cork. So, yeah, he's in Ireland. I wasn't aware of that. That's interesting that you have to, once you have 4 walls and a roof. I wonder if you had 3 walls and a roof. But,
Good point.
I'll take out one of my walls or take the roof off.
Yeah.
The last one I have here, it's kind of a comment, and it's just jumping back again to something that we spoke about earlier. It's from Lucid. He said, Dr. Robert Becker wrote in his book that Body Electric, that radiation has beneficial effects when it was tested for mind control and social behaviour of crows. So, yeah, I wonder, maybe when they had...
He's absolutely correct. Like back in I want to say in the early 50s, the Federal Communication Commission in the U.S., they stated then that 2.45 gigahertz in particular was a very, very useful frequency in terms of diathermy. The body absorbed it 7,000 times greater than it did at 27 megahertz. So it was actually prescribed, and it was assigned to the medical community back then. The difference being that it was the power density or the signal strength that they emitted. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
You're allowed to talk, Steve. You okay?
Yeah. No, sorry. I was trying to multitask there. I was reading something on screen as well. I'm trying to listen at the same time. No, just Steve says he called the ESB, which is the power provider, to ask them where they thought they had the authority to install wireless meters in private property without consent of the owner, and he was told every house in the country has to have one. He then... no, that was you. No, that was you. Sorry, you replied then, say you had put them on notice. It's
a case of document and verify the obligation. Yeah. You know, document and verify where in the law that says that, and if it's a statute, then. But then again, look, at the end of the day, laws are made by men. Yeah. It's not as if a god, someone, you know, who whether it was a man with a white beard living in a cloud or whatever anyone's perception of God is, came down and said, you know, this is the law. Laws are made by man, and that's one thing that we have to accept, that with enough people power we can change them. So I mean, as much as it looks like a dire, dreary situation, it can be changed. It can be, definitely. Well, Jerry, we've reached that time in the evening, and I'd just like to say a big thank you for coming on and talking to us all about this technology and what you're doing, and thanks for what you're doing in educating the people and waking them up to the dangers of smart meters and wireless technology. So thanks again for coming on. I'll pass you over to Steve, and Steve will do the roundup there.
Yeah, thank you, Alan.
Okay, well, Jerry, the roundup generally just consists of me asking, well, obviously I want to thank you as well, because the information has been quite good, and I think you've given it to us in, you know, a fashion that's easy, digestible and understandable, and fair play. But do you have any books, DVDs, websites, a YouTube channel, or anywhere where anyone listening to this podcast or this live broadcast can get any more information or maybe follow your work in any way?
Well, let me see.
Well, you have YouTube videos. If you want to see Jerry, there are YouTube videos of Jerry doing the talk. That's how I've seen you, Jerry.
Well, like for the audience, it really has nothing to do with me, but in terms of them educating themselves, the two that I recommend, if people have a shortage of time, I would definitely recommend that everybody should look at resonance beings of frequency. Just Google that name, resonance, RESONANCE - beings of frequency. And then I would also Google a German scientist, a medical doctor. He's lived here actually in Seattle, Washington. And his name is Dietrich Klinghardt. And Dietrich is like diet, Dietrich. Klinghardt, Klinghardt. And he's a very, very impressive scientist, doctor. And he will tell, for example, women in particular, if a woman comes into his office and says that she's pregnant or wants to find out, he will tell her, and I'm really, really truncating this, but he'll say, if I take my radio frequency meter, and if I go to your home, and I measure the ambient level of radiation in your home, I can tell you with a great degree of accuracy whether or not you will have an autistic child.
Wow.
That's pretty scary.
That is pretty scary.
Jerry, can you give us that doctor's second name again? You were spelling it and I was trying to type it, and I'm sorry I couldn't type as quick as you spelled it.
I'm sorry. His name is Klinghardt, KF, like Kilo, Lima, India, November, Golf, Hotel, Alpha, Romeo, Delta, Tango.
Roger received
Roger, 73 and 88, guys.
Okay, Jerry, brilliant. Listen, Jerry, stay with us there for a minute. We're just going to go to a musical break and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMIreland.com, CNSradio.me.com and ICRadioNetwork.com.
And we're back, a little bit of Belinda Carlisle there. And leave a light on. I won't tell you what Alan was singing.
And what you were thinking.
Well, I was thinking the same thing, and he started singing it, and it wasn't very nice. In fact, it's a family show.
It is a family show.
Lucky we haven't thoughts.
Lucky we were on a break.
Yeah. Good information, though, wasn't it?
Great information. Again, we go back to wireless technology and what's involved. And so the plan of attack for myself and Steve, what we're going to try and do, if we can, is to organise a local seminar with Walter Graham to talk about dangers of Wi-Fi and wireless technology, smart meters and stuff like that. It'll be locally, it'll be in County Meath. So fingers crossed, we'll get that organised, and we just have to sort out the logistics, and we'll let people know when it's going to be on. And there'll be limited room. The place we're thinking of doing it is going to be limited room, and it'll be free, by the way. It won't be, there's no charge, it'll be free. Just donations.
Donations at the door, yeah.
Donations at the door, but it'll be free.
But as you say, it'll be limited to the first 5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, you're hiring the O2, are you?
I wish.
Okay. Right, so for next week, our guest on is a lady called Rosa Kyra, I think her name is. We'll find out when we get her on next week. But she's an expert with Agenda 21. She's in America, and they are further down the line than we are with Agenda 21. As I said, if you don't think that we are actually working on Agenda 21, go to the local website, the local council website, and type Agenda 21, and I'm sure you'll come up with information regarding it, because I did that to our local council and it was on there. So Rosa is further on down the line. She's a big campaigner against Agenda 21, and she's going to come on next week, and she's going to hopefully tell us all about it and what we should be doing to stop it as much as we can.
A little bit of information just come up on screen there with people having a chat amongst themselves, which is fine, we've probably saying things about people, you should be growing your own food in your own garden and all this carry on. Because of all this, the Codex Alimentarius and what they're going to be doing to seeds, and that you should, where possible, grow your own fruit and veg and what have you. Crown Copyright says, though, and I think he's spot on again, as per usual. He's our man with the knowledge. But yeah, if the land that your garden is on is registered, then it's not your garden. So obviously, if you start growing stuff in your garden and you're not, using the Monsanto seed or whatever, obviously you can be shut down. They can shut your garden down, boy.
Well, the thing is, do you actually own your property? That's the question.
No, you don't.
You own your property when, and if they say, oh, well, you do own it, and I'll go, okay, I'll stop my mortgage payments, and then we'll see what happens. That's proof to tell you who owns your mortgage.
Yeah, Steve he has some definitive proof that you can grow your own healthy food without daylight. We will be quite interested in that, because not everyone has a garden, and not everyone has a big garden. But yeah, if there's any information, I've never heard of that. I mean, that's kind of news to me. Growing your own food, healthy food, without daylight. I don't know. What do you put it out at night? I don't know. Yeah, that'd be. I'd be interested in hearing more on that.
Maybe the mushrooms. Okay, just very quickly before we go. Well, you put mushrooms in the dark, don't you?
What's for dinner? Mushrooms.
Mushrooms.
What's for tea?
Mushrooms. Right, okay, and just a quickie on the bumper stickers. We still have bumper stickers, 5 for 5. Get your bumper stickers. If you have bumper stickers already, it'd be great if you take a photo and send it in to us and we put it up on the website. Just advertising them and getting out there. And obviously what we'll probably do as well is that if we do have the seminar with Walter talking about the wireless, we'll obviously be giving out free bumper stickers down there as well, as a little incentive and a little bonus as well.
So if you couldn't be bothered buying them, come to the talk when we have it arranged, and you get a free one anyway.
Exactly, yeah. So we'll organise that. We'll keep you posted when that's going to happen. We just have to sort out logistics and all that kind of stuff and see what we can do.
I know what you're going to ask me, and I don't know.
Well,
you're going to ask me who's Vin got on tonight. I don't know. I never actually thought of asking him. And sure, it's only 5 minutes to go, so.
I'm sure it'd be very interesting anyway.
It's always interesting.
Of course. Always. So if you have any links or any information, thanks a lot for sending the links in and keeping us informed of what's going on. We do kind of, because of all the links we get in, we just kind of select a few and then send them out because we don't want to inundate people with too much stuff. But it's a good mixture of links that we send out. I'd like to think because different people have different interests. And we try and cover a lot of areas, as you know. So hopefully you've got something out of the links that you get when you're registered. So it's important that, if you want to be part of getting the links, then obviously you have to register on the site. And then we send out, once a week, we send out a list of links that we find interesting that have been sent in by the listeners. So thanks for doing that. Thanks for passing on the information, anything that you hear. Now, before we go, I did get a phone call from a lady in Oldcastle which is in County Meath, who has some information regarding, let's just say, a lady that was raped in her younger days. So we're hoping she's going to go off and investigate it, and we're going to try and find out more information about it, because it was quite harrowing apparently, what went on, and apparently a lot of this went on in the early 50s and 60s anyway. So, but if there's any whistleblowers out there, this is the kind of point I'm making. By all means, get in touch with us, and if you can give us the proof and the evidence, because that's obviously it's hearsay until we have some proof or evidence. Then obviously we can talk to you and we can talk about it on the show. If you don't want to come on, then we can just mention it. But it'd be good that we start exposing these things. This year is going to be the year of exposing everything, and that's what we need to do.
Steady on. Well, there's some things that should not be exposed.
There's some things that should never be shown. But so that's who's on the show next week. And you've got on plan tomorrow, Steve, as it's a bank holiday?
Yes, I'll probably have a lie on till about 7:30. Because that's what time my little young fella gets up at. Well, when I say he gets up, he's like an alarm clock. Whether it's a school morning or not, 7:30, he just kind of strolls into the bedroom. And, can I have me breakfast? So I'll be awake from 7:30 because sometimes, when you wake up, it's kind of difficult to get back to sleep sometimes. So yeah, that's I don't know. No, I think we might take a trip out tomorrow. A little family run in the automobile down to Pastures Yonder or Farmer Johnson's Field or whatever takes our fancy. Anything organised yourself? Plan?
Nothing planned at the moment. No, there's just a few household things that have to be done. Very quickly, I was doing a bit of work the weekend for a person who had problems with their iPhone. And they had the phone unlocked from O2, and they got a Vodafone SIM. So they wanted me to actually sort it out for them. And it's a bit of a con with that iPhone. I mean, I don't like the way you have to do everything through iTunes. And you have to register your phone through iTunes. Very kind of corporate and controlled. And if you ring apple.com, if you go to apple.com, and if you ring tech support, one incident is €35.
Sweet mother of
bit
God.
like Microsoft.
It's
a complete rip-off. Really is a complete rip-off. Yeah. Anyway.
Plus they're all made by children in sweatshops. That's improving.
There you go. So go to Android, open source. Okay, take care of yourself. Have a good week. Stay safe. And obviously next week we'll be talking to you then. For myself, Alan James, take it easy. Okay, thanks for that. And I'll say good night and sayonara and arrivederci and to all our foreign listeners. And we'll do it all again next week. We're just coming up to 9 o'clock. So if you want more good chat,
stay tuned or switch over to, well, sorry, you're not listening on AirPlayer because of the issue with it, but stay tuned. Vin will be coming up at 9 bells, and we'll do it all again next week. So take care. From myself, Stephen George, good night.